Welcome back. We are having the best conversation with Dr. Rice Broocks, the author of God's Not Dead. And we're going to talk about something a little sticky in this one, if we can continue this week of where is God in this world that is a little crazy right now. You brought up something earlier, and I want to continue with that, and it's going to get a little touchy. So a lot of people who listen to us have been hurt. I mean, like really hurt, traumatized. And I actually had a pretty traumatic childhood myself. I had a father who was a minister who, my dad was very far from the perfect minister. Let me just start with that. And he was not a part of my life growing up. So that'll give you some idea. And then just a lot of drama growing up with my mom. Now, personally, I can tell you where God was when I was growing up and there was a lot of trauma and drama. He wasn't there. That was the problem. So for me, that was the problem. So personally, my life was full of chaos and drama and trauma until I figured that part out, until I made peace with God and I allowed God back into my life.
In your life.
Then there was purpose, then there was hope, and then there was healing. But not everybody's there that listens to us. Not everybody feels that way, and they don't understand. And so what do we say to people who have experienced that kind of trauma and pain, and even far worse than I have?
Maybe even the church hurt them.
And that was my case.
So I grew up Roman Catholic. My mother was not kidding about that. And I went to Catholic school. But I'm completely horrified by the sex abuse scandal in the church. And it's not just that. Is someone who's treated a lot of people who grew up in what really is abusive church families. When you hear that, what goes through your head? And how do you counsel people? Because I know this isn't new for you.
No. And the first thing is always to listen to the people's individual stories. So rather than just generically, when I'm asked this, each person has a story. Each person's life was dramatically affected. And if they were negatively affected in the name of God or by somebody representing God, the highest condemnations of Jesus, the highest. When people talk about hell and why would God send people to hell, I said, well, just to be specific, Jesus really talks specifically about hell to religious people because who they were and what they represented had such an impact.
Yes.
The New Testament says, let not many of you become teachers, for there's a stricter judgment. In a short way, just because somebody claims to believe in God, I mean, I believe in the police and I believe in the speed limit, but that doesn't mean I'll slow down. So just because somebody claims they believe in God and even claims that they know what God's instructions are, just makes them more culpable, not necessarily more prone to do it. That's why atheists can be good. When somebody says to me, are you saying atheists are bad? No, atheists can be good. They do good things. Why can an atheist be good and a religious person be bad? Because we're both made in God's image. So there's a moral code written on the inside of us. Romans chapter 2. Romans 1 says that the evidence of God is everywhere in creation. But then Romans 2 says that the conscience bears witness to the fact that moral law is within us. So even though you don't know where it comes from or you can account for it, you still can act morally. But even more so, if you know where it comes from and you know there's a source to it to perpetrate an act against a child. I mean, Jesus said, if you hurt one of these little ones, it would be better than a millstone tied around your neck. So the strongest condemnations are for those that would hurt somebody. The strongest judgments come for those that misguide people and if you represent God, to steer them off or to get them to where now they hate God because of what you did and they thought you were a believer or thought you were a representative of God.
So if I really want to get Tana going, there has to be a neuroscience part of this discussion.
Right.
Because, we have a database of 150,000 scans now. And part of our database, we have about 1,000 convicted felons, including 100 murderers.
Oh, and we could not agree on this. We still don't a lot.
I actually had no opinion on the death penalty.
I do.
Until attorneys started sending me people who did seriously bad things. And when you see their brains, not always, but most of the time, they're severely damaged brains. And then I'm like, it is not the sign of an evolved society to be killing sick people. And so I've been in court on death penalty cases. And ultimately, I realized that's why in the Bible it says multiple times not to judge, because it's complicated, right? Behavior is complicated. And just because you have a bad brain doesn't mean you're going to do something bad, right? It's complicated. There's spiritual factors, there's psychological factors, there's social factors. But my work has softened my heart. And what I get horrified by is often they have brains that could be better. And, that's what I believe God put me on earth to do was the mission I'm here to do.
God and I are still working out my.
Let me respond to that, but I want to make. I don't want to
God and I are
I don't
still
wanna interrupt you.
wrestling. If someone hurts my child, jail's the only place.
So,
safe.
Yes, but
So
I want to
we have
respond to
had-
this, and
Nope,
then I'll,
not gonna happen.
I'll do it quickly, and then I know you have
Not
something
happening.
to say on it.
I'm having none of it.
We've had many discussions.
Yeah.
on-
No, and it actually talks about not judging individually. If I'm correct, it says that as a society, our laws are made to be.
The wrong,
One
there's
look at
wrong.
this.
It's kind of like cholesterol. There's good and bad. There's good and bad judgment. We're to judge with righteous judgment.
Yes,
Now,
thank
judging
you.
something is
And they're to pay for this.
judging something is like the guy that sees a woman on the bus and her kids are unruly, and he's going, that woman's terrible.
That's
She's
personal
not.
judgment,
And then all
right.
of a sudden he finds out, he corrects, he can't take it anymore to, hey, get your kids under. And he says, and the woman says, I'm sorry, I just lost my husband.
Yes.
So here's a woman who's just come from seeing her husband die, and she's on the bus. And so you judged based not on the full facts. But, there is an entire book of the Bible called Judges, so it's not necessarily a bad thing. And there will be eternal judgment, as it says in Hebrews 6, that one of the basic doctrines is eternal judgment. So I think and I'm not going to intrude on your area of expertise, because I think that there's always case-by-case things. That's why a good judge will listen to every case. When somebody asks me, is God going to give a blanket pass to this group of people in eternity? Oh, y'all go to heaven. You got the stamp on your hand. You said the right words. So wait, the judgment, because God is eternal, he has an infinite amount of moments to listen to every detail and every word of your life. It says we will, Matthew 12, stand and account for every idle word. So God has an eternity to each individual that's ever lived to stand before him and to go through every second of our life and why it happened. So ultimately, I think that there is a righteous judgment. I think there are factors that have to be dealt with individually. So back to the earth, not to eternity, back to the databases and the brains. I think that's why we have to bring every fact to bear. Now, I think as a whole, I don't think a person who commits some crazy act, though, did that all in one day. In other words, there's probably a pattern of other things that led to that. So when it comes to, I think if a person is mentally ill, then obviously then they should be given that consideration. In general, the general principle, though, is that there's the strongest judgments. And for somebody to hurt a child, that's obviously, God's not behind that, and God will deal with it. And that's why I think think about the mercy of God that all this is coming to light.
But we can't help out a little until that time. Till
Well-
God takes
well,
over.
we're not. We're
So
not.
let's talk about
that's
James
what
Holmes, who was the Batman shooter.
Yeah, no, it's okay. That one actually makes me cringe. I'm not totally without.
Empathy.
No.
The whole imaging stuff for me, it just gave me pause.
Yeah.
And I admit it did me too.
Pause and purpose. So for those of you that haven't seen the Facebook talk I did at Saddleback Church, it's now got nearly 40 million views. And I tell my passion story. And my nephew, when he was 9 years old, attacked a little girl on the baseball field for no reason, out of the blue. He was drawing pictures of himself shooting other children and hanging from a tree.
9.
He's Columbine or Aurora or Sandy Hook waiting to happen. And it ended up he had a cyst the size of a golf ball occupying this space. Easy to call him bad, hard to go, why? And, and my faith has always been the same. It's, there's complex reasons for behavior, and I'm not the judge.
And isn't this hopeful, though? You think about it, that people that, like, I think it was Garfield who was shot, and he didn't die from the assassin's bullet because of his physician's dirty hands that operated on him.
Yeah, interesting, right?
Yeah, so here we are, we're learning so much. And imagine being able to get brain health early on so that the
That's the hope.
person never gets to the point
See,
of doing what
that's
he did
why
or
I
she
love what
did.
we do.
Yeah, because we're getting better. And I think that's why collectively I think if I look back 200 years ago, 300 years ago, I mean, the world was a pretty crazy place in the Middle Ages. I mean, even though it seems bad to us, a lot going on, I think collectively as a society, there's a overall globally, from poverty to sicknesses being eradicated to, I think it doesn't seem like it because we tend to judge
Focus
things
on
on
the
the
negative.
immediate moment. But I think that there's such an understanding coming, and there's so much insight into our DNA, into brain scans, into, how do we operate in civility with other religions? That's possible. That's not a pipe dream. That's not a distant dream. I think there are massive areas and massive examples that we could go into if we had the time of where the good is taking place. The problem is the bad news sells. That gets
Where
amplified.
you bring your attention determines how you feel. Thank you so much. This
This
has
was a
just
joy.
been
Thank you both.
amazing.
This is
How
fantastic.
can people learn more about your work, your church? I mean, obviously they can go online and get God's Not Dead.
You were showing
or
me an
the
app
Human
earlier
Right.
that was really cool too.
Yeah, they can just download. There's a God's Not Dead app. That's one thing. RiceBroocks.com. That's kind of a central location where it can
And
get
your last name is spelled a little funky.
Yeah, thank you. I've been explaining that, but the rice is even more of
I
an
want to know.
explanation.
We're going to have dinner later, so I wanted you to tell me that.
Well, that was Rice University. That was actually my relative was the one that founded that, but that didn't do me any good when I'm growing up. I played basketball in high school, and I got to play 1 minute, so they called me Minute Rice. I would come in at the end.
So funny.
So yeah, so when I speak to
hilarious.
sports teams, I'm always quick to say, look, it has nothing to do with my athletic
That
background.
is
I
so
was
funny.
Minute Rice. So.
Minute Rice.
But
So
yeah,
his last
so
name is
ricebrooks.com.
BROOCKS.
Yeah.
God's Not Dead app. Thank you so much.
Thank you both, and thank you for what you do. I wish I could have interviewed you. I'm going to do it on the God's Not Dead app, so your turn's coming.
I look forward to it.
It was
Take care.
wonderful.
Use the code podcast10 to get a 10% discount on a full evaluation at amenclinics.com or on our supplements at brainmdhealth.com. Thank you for listening to the Brain Warriors Way podcast. Go to iTunes and leave a review, and you'll automatically be entered into a drawing to get a free signed copy of the Brain Warriors Way and the Brain Warriors Way cookbook we give away every month.